You already know what you need to do. You've thought about it, planned it, imagined the results, and yet you hesitate. You delay. You stall in the quiet hope that maybe later you'll feel more ready. But later never comes. Readiness is a lie we tell ourselves to justify inaction. What you're really dealing with isn't a lack of motivation, it's resistance. It's the voice that says wait when you should move. It's the invisible barrier between who you are and who you could become. Stoicism doesn't wait for the perfect mood. It doesn't ask if you feel like it. It tells you to act right now, because action is not the result of motivation, as it's the cause of it. You don't need more inspiration. You need movement. You need motion. You need to break the spell of hesitation by doing the thing your mind is trying to avoid. In this episode, we're going to break through the 7 mental chains that hold you back. 7 Stoic strategies that push you forward whether you feel like it or not. Because discipline doesn't care how you feel. It only cares that you show up. If this hits you where it matters, if something inside you knows it's time to stop waiting and start acting, then subscribe to Stoic Reflections. Like this video to show your commitment and leave a comment with the action you've been avoiding. No more delays. Let's move. 1. Understand procrastination for what it is. Procrastination isn't laziness. It's not about being unmotivated or lacking discipline. It's fear, plain and silent. And like most fears, it doesn't scream. It whispers. It convinces you that you need more time, more clarity, more energy, more confidence before you begin. But underneath all those excuses is one core truth. You're afraid of what starting really means. Because starting means facing the unknown. Starting means confronting the possibility that your work won't be perfect, that you might fall short, that effort might not guarantee success. So instead, your mind creates distance, not through outright refusal, but through delay. It turns a simple task into a mountain. It shifts your focus from action to avoidance. And what seems like a short pause becomes a habit, then an identity. I'll do it later becomes I'm the kind of person who never finishes what they start. And that's the true cost of procrastination. Not just the time you lose, but the version of yourself you become by staying still. The Stoics saw this clearly. They understood that the true obstacle wasn't the task in front of you, and it was the weight of your own expectations. The belief that if it can't be done perfectly, it's not worth starting. That fear, that internal judgment is what keeps you in place. You overthink, you overprepare, you talk about the thing instead of doing the thing. And all of that thinking gives you the illusion of control, while reality slips away. The longer you wait, the heavier the task becomes, not because it changes, but because you do. Your courage erodes, your inner confidence fades, and soon you're not avoiding a project, you're avoiding yourself. To break this cycle, you must understand procrastination as resistance. Resistance to discomfort, to uncertainty, to vulnerability. And the Stoic solution is simple, but not easy. Move. Begin, without drama, without ceremony, without waiting to feel like it. Because the truth is, you won't feel ready, you'll feel fear, tension, doubt. And that's normal. What matters isn't the presence of fear, it's your willingness to act anyway. The first few minutes are always the hardest, but once you take that step, something shifts, the fog lifts, your focus sharpens, your body catches up to what your mind was trying to delay, and in that movement you find your strength again. The Stoic doesn't look for the perfect conditions. They understand that the only right moment is now. They don't argue with emotion, well, they bypass it through action. And once you stop waiting for motivation and start moving with intention, you take back control. You rewrite the story you've been telling yourself about your capabilities, because every time you begin, you send a message to your mind, I'm not ruled by fear, I act in spite of it. And that message compounds. Over days, over weeks, over a lifetime, it becomes identity. You stop being someone who delays. You become someone who does. Procrastination will always offer comfort, but that comfort has a cost. It trades the short-term relief of not starting for the long-term burden of regret. And when you step back and see that clearly, you realize that the discomfort of beginning is always less than the pain of staying stuck. So the choice becomes simple. Stay in the loop of hesitation or take one small step forward. You don't need to finish it all. You don't need to win today. You just need to start. Not because it's easy, but because the life you want begins on the other side of action. 2. Use the 5-minute rule. The mind is brilliant at making things seem bigger than they are. A task that takes 20 minutes can feel like a mountain. A simple email turns into dread. A workout becomes a battle. But the truth is, most of what we avoid isn't difficult. It's uncomfortable. And that discomfort grows the longer we hesitate. The 5-minute rule cuts directly through that cycle. It's a method grounded in simplicity, but backed by deep Stoic logic. Commit to doing the task for just 5 minutes, that's all. 5 minutes of full presence, full effort, no negotiation. Because when you remove the pressure to finish and focus only on beginning, resistance crumbles. You don't have to do it all, you just have to begin. That's the crack in the wall. And once the wall breaks, momentum flows in. Stoicism doesn't wait for ideal moods or magical energy. It teaches us to act, even in the absence of motivation. The 5-minute rule is Stoic in nature because it removes emotion from the decision. It says, this task matters, this moment is mine. I will start, not because I feel like it, but because I said I would. And in doing so, you reclaim power from the part of your brain that overthinks, exaggerates, delays. You silence the inner voice that says it's too much by proving, with your actions, that it's not. The first push is always the hardest, but once you break inertia, everything begins to shift. Most people believe they need to feel inspired to begin, but that's the lie that keeps them stuck. The reality is this: action creates energy. Action sharpens focus. Action builds confidence, and you don't need to commit to hours of productivity to feel that shift, just 5 minutes. Once you start, your brain catches up. It stops fighting you and starts supporting you. You enter flow, distraction fades, and what once felt heavy becomes surprisingly light. You realize it wasn't the task that was the problem, it was your hesitation. It was the mental weight you added by waiting. And even if you stop after those 5 minutes, you've already won, because you've kept the promise you made to yourself. You've shifted from passivity to presence. That's how Stoics train discipline, not in grand gestures, but in small, repeatable moments of integrity. The discipline to begin, even briefly, to show up, even imperfectly, to remind yourself that control is not about dominating your schedule. It's about mastering your response and choosing movement over stagnation, again and again. The 5-minute rule is more than a technique, it's a mental weapon. It gives you a doorway into action when everything in your mind wants to stay still. It simplifies the impossible into the immediate. And once you realize that 5 minutes is all you need to disrupt the cycle, you stop waiting for perfect plans. You start living in motion. Stoicism teaches that excellence is built in daily decisions, small, quiet, consistent. And no decision is smaller or more powerful than the choice to begin right now for 5 minutes, because that small choice repeated over time doesn't just change your day, it changes your identity. You become someone who moves, someone who begins, someone who finishes, and it all starts with 5. 3. Break tasks into small, actionable steps. Overwhelm is not caused by the size of a task, Mugi. It's caused by how your mind holds it. When you look at the whole mountain at once, your brain panics. It sees everything that could go wrong, every detail that needs attention, every possible point of failure, and instead of responding with clarity, it freezes. That paralysis is not a sign of weakness, it's a signal. It tells you that the problem isn't the goal itself, the problem is the way you're approaching it. And the Stoic solution is simple: shrink the lens. Focus on the next step, not the entire path. The goal is not to conquer the future. The goal is to move forward right now. Stoicism teaches that action must always begin in the present, not in imagination, not in expectation, but in what you can do now. When you break a task into small, actionable parts, you bring it into the realm of what's real, what's controllable. You turn a vague intention into a concrete step. You transform write the report into open the document, then write the first sentence. And in doing so, you remove the emotional weight that builds when a task remains abstract. Because abstraction fuels anxiety, but specificity breeds momentum. The Stoic doesn't try to do everything at once. They master what is right in front of them, and then they move forward. This approach is not just effective, it's a mental discipline. It forces you to practice presence, to anchor your energy to the immediate, to stop performing mental gymnastics about the entire project, and instead ask, what's the next smallest thing I can do right now? That question is powerful. It cuts through the fog, it silences excuses, it gives you a foothold on a task that once felt too large to begin. And the moment you act on that foothold, even if it's just organizing files, sending one email, or outlining a paragraph, you gain momentum. You prove to yourself that progress is not about massive effort. It's about consistent direction. When you focus only on the final result, your mind fills with pressure. The outcome becomes a measure of your worth, your intelligence, your success. But when you break the process into pieces, you shift your identity from someone who's trying to succeed into someone who simply executes the next step. And this is key to Stoic living. You do not obsess over outcomes, you master execution. You define success not by what you finished, but by what you faced with clarity. And in doing so, you learn to trust the process more than the pressure. Each small step becomes a proof point, a quiet victory, and when you start stringing those steps together, you create momentum that doesn't depend on motivation. It depends on movement. Over time, this way of working rewires your relationship with productivity. Tasks that once felt paralyzing now feel accessible. You stop avoiding, you start engaging, and more importantly, you stop seeing large goals as threats. You start seeing them as a series of steps, nothing more. Breaking tasks down is an act of mental strength. It shows you're not just reacting, you're thinking strategically. You're refusing to be defeated by scale. And in doing so, you align with one of the core Stoic teachings, that greatness is not built in one day, but in 1,000 small decisions. Each made in the present, each grounded in reason, each taken one step at a time. 4. Action precedes motivation. One of the greatest myths that keeps people trapped is the idea that you need to feel ready before you begin, that you need inspiration before movement. That motivation is the fire that lights the path forward. But the truth, and the Stoics knew this centuries ago, is that motivation is not the cause of action. It is the result. It is born out of movement, not the other way around. You don't act because you're motivated. You become motivated because you act. And if you keep waiting to feel in the mood, you will stay stuck. Because moods are unreliable. Feelings fluctuate. Circumstances change. But your ability to choose action, to take a step forward regardless of how you feel, that is stable, that is controllable, that is power. The Stoic doesn't rely on emotional wind. They build internal momentum through discipline. And discipline begins not when things feel good, but precisely when they don't. When you're tired, when you're distracted, when everything inside you says later. That's the moment that separates the person who moves from the one who waits. And if you can act in that moment, you break the illusion that you need to feel a certain way before doing the work. You begin to learn that your hands know what to do, even when your mind is foggy. That clarity comes through action, not through overthinking. There's a shift that happens the moment you act. It's almost invisible. The resistance loses its grip. Your energy rises, your posture changes, your focus tightens. What felt impossible 5 minutes ago becomes manageable. And the truth is, it was never too hard. It just felt too far away because you stayed still. But the moment you move, the distance collapses. You remember that doing creates its own momentum, that showing up starts a chain reaction. And once you start that chain, the hardest part is already over. Stoicism teaches us to become indifferent to moods and obedient to reason. If something must be done, then it should be done, whether we feel like it or not. That detachment from emotional impulse is not coldness, it's strength. It means that you are no longer at the mercy of fleeting feelings. You have learned to act on principle, not pressure. And this principle builds trust with yourself. Every time you act without waiting to be inspired, you reinforce the truth. I can move, I can begin. I don't need to feel perfect to act with power. And what's more, this kind of action doesn't just build motivation, it builds identity. You stop being someone who waits for the right conditions. You become someone who shapes them. You stop wishing for momentum and start generating it. You no longer measure your potential by how good you feel, but by how consistently you show up. That shift in perspective transforms your life, not all at once, but hour by hour, choice by choice. When you let go of the myth that motivation must come first, you unlock something rare: freedom. The freedom to act on your own terms, the freedom to build without drama, the freedom to stop needing to feel a certain way before doing the right thing. Because action is not just a tool, it's a signal. It tells your mind, I am capable, I am focused, I am in motion, and that message changes everything, not by chance, but by choice. And it begins the moment you stop waiting and start moving. 5. Visualize your success vividly. The mind moves toward what it sees clearly, not what it wants vaguely, not what it hopes might happen someday. What it sees, in detail, in shape, in feeling. When your goals are vague, your actions will be scattered. When your vision is blurry, your energy will be divided. But when you see your success with intensity and precision, you begin to act in alignment with it, not because of magic, but because your mind finally knows where to go. The Stoics didn't use the modern term visualization, but they understood its essence. They spoke often of preparing the mind for both adversity and triumph, of shaping inner clarity so that the outer chaos would not shake you. And part of that clarity is being able to mentally step into the version of yourself who already lives with discipline, resilience, and purpose. Vivid visualization is not fantasy, it's a form of mental training. You close your eyes and you don't just think about success, you feel it. You see yourself rising early with energy. You feel the weight of your posture as you work with focus. You hear the sound of your voice as you speak with clarity. You feel the calm in your chest as you follow through on what you've promised yourself. And in doing that, in engaging all your senses, your brain begins to treat the image as familiar. The unknown becomes known. The impossible becomes rehearsed. And suddenly taking the next step feels more natural because your mind has already been there. This is not empty imagination, it's strategic rehearsal. Athletes use it, leaders use it, writers, speakers, warriors, they've all used the mind to prepare the body before it acts. Stoicism teaches that our inner world must be trained just as much as our outer conduct, that the mind must be taught where to go before the body can follow with purpose. And when you visualize not just the end result, but the process, the discomfort, the repetition, the discipline, you harden your mental environment, you prepare to suffer with strength, to succeed with humility, and to stay centered no matter what rises or falls around you. What makes visualization so powerful is that it reminds you who you want to become. And in seeing that clearly, with all your senses engaged, you start to embody that version of yourself. You start to make decisions aligned with that identity. You don't need to wonder what they would do. You already see it. So you follow it. In your habits, in your tone, in your priorities. And over time, that imagined self stops being imaginary. It becomes the new baseline, the new standard. Not because something mystical occurred, but because you gave your mind a target and you moved toward it with purpose. The mistake people make is visualizing only the glory, the victory, the reward. But the Stoic knows better. They visualize the struggle, the delays, the pain, the rejection, and they prepare for it. Because when you rehearse the hardship, it doesn't break you and it meets a prepared opponent. When you imagine falling and rising again, you're not surprised when it happens. You're ready. And readiness in the Stoic world is everything. It is the true edge. So close your eyes with intention. See your habits, your posture, your response to failure. Feel the discomfort of saying no to distraction. Hear the silence of focused work. Smell the air of early mornings. Taste the resilience of progress. Engage all of it not as escape, but as preparation. Because what the mind rehearses often, the body learns to repeat. And when vision becomes aligned with action, success is no longer distant. It's inevitable, not through chance, but through choice, through clarity, through relentless mental alignment with the person you are becoming. 6. Harness the power of now. The mind loves to wander. It drifts backward into regrets, forward into fantasies, sideways into distractions. It clings to yesterday's mistakes and tomorrow's possibilities, but rarely does it land where your life actually happens. Now. And yet this moment, not the next one, not the ideal one, is the only place you can ever act. The Stoics understood this with ruthless clarity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And what is the mind's greatest misuse of power? Its constant escape from the present. Because when you abandon the now, you surrender your ability to move, to change, to act with intention. You become stuck in anticipation, planning, remembering, everything but doing. Harnessing the power of now is not about passivity. It's not about waiting for something mystical to happen in the present. It's about grabbing it, owning it, acting inside it, because later is a lie. Later is comfort, disguised as control. You tell yourself you'll start tomorrow when things are calmer, when you feel better, when the timing is perfect. But that version of the future doesn't exist. It never will. What exists is now, imperfect, unprepared, maybe inconvenient, but real. And only what is real can be changed. When you discipline your focus into this moment, something shifts. The chaos quiets, the anxiety shrinks, the mind begins to see clearly, because it's no longer juggling shadows. You don't need to solve everything at once. You need to do what's in front of you. And if you do that with full attention, full energy, full honesty, you've already stepped into mastery. Not mastery over others, not over outcomes, but over yourself. And that is where all real power begins. The Stoics trained themselves daily to return to the now, to let go of outcomes and focus on the virtue of the present act. Epictetus didn't tell his students to build a perfect life. He told them to take perfect care of the moment they were in, because the present moment is the only one that ever obeys you. Everything else, the past, the future, the opinions of others, the results of your work, lies outside your command. But what you say, what you think, what you do right now, that is yours. And most people waste that power by trading it for distraction or daydreams. To harness the power of now, you don't need rituals or mantras. You need awareness. Interrupt your drift. Ask yourself, where am I? What can I do right now that aligns with the person I want to become? The answer doesn't need to be grand. It might be standing up, closing the app, writing one sentence, starting the workout. But when you act in that moment, not with drama, but with clarity, you anchor yourself in a way few people ever do. This is not just about productivity, it's about identity. The person who trains themselves to return to the now becomes unshakable. Because they no longer depend on the future to fix them. They don't need to escape into goals to feel worthy. They don't lose time chasing distractions because they know that reality, their real life, is always here, now, waiting for their attention. And when you live like that, you don't just get more done. You become more deliberate, more alive, more aligned. You stop existing in fragments and start living in presence. That's what the Stoic means by power, not control over everything, but full command of the only thing that ever mattered, your choice in this moment, now. 7. Reward progress, not just outcomes. Most people wait until the finish line to celebrate. They hold back their encouragement, their pride, their satisfaction, until the task is complete, the goal is reached, the result is visible. But this mindset, while common, is quietly destructive. It trains your brain to associate value only with the end. And by doing so, it robs you of the momentum that comes from honoring your effort. Stoicism teaches us something radically different. The path is the virtue. The process is where character is forged, and if you only reward results, you reinforce the idea that effort without perfection is failure. That's not strength. That's self-sabotage dressed as high standards. When you begin to reward progress, even in its smallest form, you change your internal relationship with work. You stop chasing approval, and you start reinforcing identity. You're not just someone who finishes, you're someone who shows up, someone who endures, someone who moves through resistance and still takes action. That mindset creates a quiet kind of confidence, not the loud celebration of a grand success, but the steady knowing that you are becoming more consistent, more disciplined, more real with yourself. Progress is often invisible to others. No one sees the moment you resisted distraction. No one applauds when you showed up on a day when motivation was dead. But those small victories matter. And if you don't honor them, your mind learns to ignore them. And what's ignored dies. That's why it's essential to build a reward system based not on applause or perfection, but on integrity. When you sit down and do the work, reward that. When you resist the urge to quit, reward that. Not with something big or dramatic. Often, the best reward is a simple acknowledgement. That mattered. That was strength. That's who I want to be. The Stoic doesn't chase dopamine. They use it. They train their mind to associate effort with fulfillment, not just because it feels good, but because it reinforces something deeper, a stable identity. You begin to trust yourself more. You start to look forward to the process because the process is where the growth happens. The outcome becomes a bonus, not the foundation, and this rewires the entire way you move through life. You no longer need to prove yourself through results. You prove yourself through presence, through showing up, through being in alignment with what you know needs to be done, regardless of how far the finish line is. This mindset also builds resilience, because the truth is, not every effort leads to the outcome you imagined. Sometimes you give your all and fall short. Sometimes the result doesn't come. And if you've trained yourself to only feel satisfied when you win, then every setback becomes identity crushing. But if you've trained your mind to find worth in the work itself, then even when the results are slow, your confidence stays steady, because you didn't build your self-respect on trophies, you built it on truth. Rewarding progress teaches your brain that effort is success, that movement matters more than mood, that small wins are not small at all. They are the foundation of everything great. And when you start to see yourself this way, you no longer need external motivation to keep going. You become your own source of fuel. You find joy in the showing up, pride in the persistence, power in the pattern. So pause today, not when you finish everything, but when you act in alignment with your path, when you choose action over avoidance, when you keep a promise to yourself. That's the moment to reward. That's where the real transformation begins. Not later, not someday, but now, with the recognition that progress is not a stepping stone to greatness. It is greatness lived in real time. You don't need to wait for a perfect morning, the right energy, or a burst of inspiration. Everything you need to move already lives inside you. The only thing that separates you from action is hesitation. And hesitation is a habit that can be broken. Today, you've walked through 7 principles rooted in timeless Stoic wisdom. Not empty motivation, not surface-level hacks, real tools to break the cycle, to shift from waiting to doing, from excuse to execution, from delay to discipline, because nothing changes until you move. Not your work, not your habits, not your identity. Motion is the medicine, and every moment you choose action over avoidance, you're not just getting things done, you're becoming someone stronger, someone clearer, someone in command. If this episode gave you a spark, if it made something in you decide that now is the time to move, then make it count. Subscribe to Stoic Reflections like this video to affirm your commitment and share in the comments. Which principle will you act on today? Not tomorrow, not later, but now. You don't need to conquer everything at once. Just don't stay still. Because the future isn't waiting, but you're ready. Let's move.